Have you ever noticed how much of your energy is spent trying to please, justify, or avoid judgment? How many times have you failed to act, not because it was impossible, but because you were afraid of what others would think? The insecure mind lives like a prisoner. Every step is measured, every word is weighed, every decision is tested by the invisible tribunal of other people's opinions. But the Stoics already knew that this was one of the greatest poisons of the soul. Epictetus said, "If you seek the approval of others, you become their slave." And he was right. When you surrender your peace to external judgment, you lose the most valuable freedom there is, the freedom to live according to your own principles. The curious thing is that most of the people we so care about pleasing are too busy with their own insecurities. While you're stuck thinking about what they'll say, they're thinking about what you'll think of them. It's a chain of silent vanity, where everyone looks at each other and no one truly lives. Stoic philosophy invites us to break this chain. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every day, "Soon you will have forgotten everything. Soon everyone will have forgotten you." And when we understand the brevity of life, we realize that the opinions of others are just passing noise. Today I want to show you 10 Stoic ways to stop caring about other people's opinions. 10 simple yet powerful practices that will help you regain clarity, strength, and most importantly, the freedom to live without asking permission to be who you are. Before we begin, write in the comments, "Today I choose to live free from the opinions of others." This sentence is more than a comment. It's a commitment to your own mind. 1. Differentiate what is under your control. The first key to stopping caring about other people's opinions is to understand one of the central ideas of Stoicism: the division between what is within our control and what is not. Epictetus got straight to the point in his manual. Some things are within our power, others are not. This simple but powerful distinction is the basis of inner freedom. The problem is that we spend much of our lives inverting this order. We try to control what people think of us, what they say, how they look at us, whether or not they approve of our choices. And at the same time, we neglect what is truly in our hands, our actions, our decisions, our thoughts. The result? We live anxious, insecure, as if we were always at the mercy of external judgment. Think about how many times you've hesitated to say something for fear of the reaction. How many times you've held back because you imagined criticism. How many times you've shaped your life around expectations that were never yours. Each of these situations is an example of wasted energy on something that was never in your control. Because no matter how hard you try, you can never stop someone from thinking or saying bad things about you. Another person's mind doesn't belong to you, it belongs to them. Marco Aurelio wrote, "You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When we bring this truth to bear on other people's opinions, it becomes clear. We can't control how others view us, but we can control how we respond to them. We can choose not to be shaken. We can choose to stand firm in what we believe, even if no one applauds. Insecurity grows precisely when we blur boundaries. We want to dominate the uncontrollable and forget to strengthen what is truly ours. But when you focus only on what depends on you, freedom is born. Imagine an invisible line. On one side, what you control, your attitudes, your choices, your posture. On the other, what you don't control, approval, criticism, judgments. Your peace depends on staying on your side of the line. This doesn't mean completely ignoring others or living in isolation. It means understanding that other people's opinions may reach you, but they don't have to govern your decisions. They're like the wind. You can't stop them from blowing, but you can decide whether to let them tear down your house or build solid foundations that will endure. Today's practice is clear. Whenever you feel the weight of someone else's opinion, ask yourself, is this under my control? If the answer is no, let go. Don't waste energy trying to manipulate perceptions. Use that energy to strengthen what's yours, your integrity, your discipline, your clarity. Because in the end, true respect doesn't come from what others think, but from what you know about yourself when you look in the mirror. If this lesson spoke to you, write in the comments, "I only take care of what is under my control." This is the first wall against the tyranny of opinions, because no one can steal the peace of those who have learned to reserve their energy only for what truly governs. 2. See the brevity of life. Memento mori. One of the Stoics' most powerful practices for cutting through the weight of outside opinions is to remember what everyone else would rather forget. Life is short. Memento mori. Remember that you will die. At first glance, this phrase may sound somber, but for the Stoics it was a source of freedom. Because when you understand that time is limited, it becomes clear that you cannot waste it living as a hostage to the judgments of others. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "You could leave life now." Let that determine what you do, think, and feel. He was emperor of Rome, bearing the weight of ruling an empire, yet he remembered every day that he had no control over how much time he had left. This awareness didn't paralyze him. On the contrary, it made him firmer, simpler, more faithful to his principles. He knew that wasting time on vanity or the approval of others was a luxury he couldn't afford. Now think about yourself. How many plans have you postponed because you were worried about what people would think? How many words haven't you said? How many projects haven't you started? How many decisions haven't you made for fear of judgment? It's as if each potential criticism carries more weight than your own life. But when you remember that time is finite, you realize that nothing is more foolish than surrendering days, months, and years to the invisible court of opinions. Seneca said, "It's not that we have little time, but that we waste a lot. And the biggest waste is living trying to fit into someone else's mold." People change their opinions constantly. Today they applaud, tomorrow they criticize, then they forget. But while their moods change, you remain trapped by invisible chains. The thought of death invites us to reverse this logic. If you knew your time was up tomorrow, would you still fear criticism? Would you still postpone a dream because someone might laugh? Would you still be paralyzed by looks? The truth is, most of the things that paralyze us would lose their importance completely. The brevity of life is a filter. It separates what matters from what is merely a distraction. The Stoic practice here is simple. When you feel the weight of others' opinions, ask yourself, will this still matter when I'm no longer here? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be no. And if it won't matter later in life, it shouldn't steal your courage today. Memento mori, it's not about living in fear, but about living in urgency. It's understanding that every day spent trying to please is one less day to live according to your values. And when you bring this awareness to the present, you realize that external opinions don't have the power you imagined. They are fleeting noises in the face of the only solid truth. Time doesn't come back. If this lesson touched you, write in the comments. Today, I choose to live with urgency, not with fear of opinions. Because life is too short to be guided by others, and freedom arises the moment you decide that your voice is worth more than any applause or criticism. 3. Don't become a slave to approval. One of life's greatest paradoxes is this: the more you seek the approval of others, the further you become from true freedom. The constant need for validation is an invisible prison. You may be in a room full of people. You may even receive applause and praise, but inside you remain chained. Because your every move depends on something beyond your control, other people's opinions. Epictetus said, "If you seek to please, you will be a slave to those you try to please." The sentence is harsh but liberating. The desire to be loved, admired, or recognized isn't wrong in itself. But when it becomes the center of your life, it saps all your strength. Because you start living like an actor on a stage, playing roles to win applause. And in the process, you forget who you really are. How many times have you held back from expressing your thoughts to avoid upsetting others? How many times have you silently agreed just to avoid a disapproving look? How many times have you dressed, spoken, or acted solely to fit into other people's mold? Each of these choices may seem small, but little by little they shape a life that isn't yours, and living a life that isn't yours is the worst form of slavery. Seneca warned, "It's sad to live according to other people's opinions because it will always be an unstable life. This happens because opinions change. What's praised today is criticized tomorrow. What's trending today is mocked tomorrow. When you depend on external approval, you're always treading on quicksand. There's never any solid ground. The Stoic understands that dignity is not being constantly applauded, but being at peace with oneself. True freedom is enduring misunderstandings without losing one's composure. It's listening to criticism without falling apart, and even receiving praise without becoming intoxicated, because both are merely echoes. They pass away. What remains is the coherence between who you are and how you act. Here's today's practice. Look at an area of your life where you've been constantly seeking approval. Ask yourself, if no one was watching, would I still do it? If the answer is no, it's a sign you're living for the audience and not for yourself. The exercise is to start acting as if there are no spectators. Choose clothes because you like them. Make decisions because they make sense to you. Speak because you believe, not because you expect applause. Don't mistake this for arrogance or disregard. The Stoic doesn't ignore others, but he refuses to surrender his own freedom in exchange for approval. He understands that living to please is a never-ending debt, because there will always be someone else to answer to. But living according to reason and virtue is a daily achievement that no one can take away. If this lesson made sense, write in the comments, I prefer freedom to approval. Because in the end, applause lasts for seconds, but the peace of living true to yourself can last a lifetime. And only those who break the slavery of approval discover the true strength of walking in their own footsteps. 4. Question the authority of the critic. Much of the suffering caused by other people's opinions stems from a simple mistake. We treat all criticism as absolute truth. Someone makes a negative comment, and without question we let it settle in our minds as if it were a sentence. It's as if each word has divine authority to define who we are. But does it really? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if a man judges me, he can only judge from what he knows, and that is never the whole. This is the key. No one sees your entire life. No critic knows all your struggles, your motives, your contexts. What they say is not a true portrayal of reality, but a limited reflection, often distorted by their own insecurities and frustrations. How many times have you received criticism that in retrospect made no sense? Maybe someone told you you weren't talented enough, but you kept going, persisted, and proved otherwise. Maybe you heard that a certain choice was wrong, but years later realized that it was precisely that choice that opened doors for you. This shows that criticism, however loud, is not a sentence. It's just an opinion, and opinion doesn't define destiny. Seneca warned, many judge us not by who we are, but by who they are. In other words, criticism almost always says more about the person giving it than the person receiving it. It often stems from envy, misunderstanding, or an unconscious desire to project onto others what they don't want to face within themselves. When you understand this, you begin to give less weight to the words that reach you. Here's the Stoic practice. Every time you receive criticism, ask yourself, who is saying this? Does this person have real authority to define my worth? Most of the time, the answer will be no. And even if it comes from someone respectable, you still have a duty to evaluate whether it's useful or just noise. A wise person doesn't automatically reject all criticism, but they don't bow down to just any criticism either. They separate what can be learned from what doesn't deserve attention. Imagine an internal court where only your reason and values have the final say. Others can speak, but only you decide whether their words carry weight or not. This metaphor helps you reclaim your autonomy in the face of judgment. You don't have to carry every stone thrown your way. You can simply leave them where they fall and keep walking. The fear of criticism diminishes when you realize that no one has more authority over your life than you do. Of course, listening to others can bring blind spots to light, but turning any comment into absolute truth is to forego your own clarity. The Stoic understands that criticism will always exist, but it's up to them to decide whether it will be a burden or just a passing breath. If this lesson spoke to you, write in the comments, I decide the weight of criticism, not others. This simple statement already puts your mind back in the right place, because in the end, what really matters is not what others say, but the authority you choose to give to the words you hear. 5. Train conscious indifference. One of the greatest lessons of Stoicism is that not everything deserves our attention. Many live as if they need to react to every comment, respond to every criticism, prove something with every sidelong glance. But this isn't strength, it's slavery. A mind that's occupied with everything loses energy for what truly matters. That's why the Stoics taught the power of conscious indifference, not the arrogance that despises the world, but the wisdom of choosing what is worth absorbing. Epictetus said, "If someone speaks ill of you and it is true, correct yourself. If it is a lie, laugh." This phrase is a manual for indifference. It shows that your energy should be used solely for growth, not for self-justification. If criticism reveals something real, seize it as an opportunity for improvement. If it's just noise, don't treat it like a sentence. The problem is that many confuse indifference with coldness. They think that being indifferent means becoming insensitive, devoid of feelings. But Stoic indifference is different. It's selective. It doesn't deny emotions. It simply chooses where to focus attention. Just as you don't pick up every piece of trash you see on the street, you also don't need to carry every word thrown at you. Marcus Aurelius remembered himself in his meditations. "If someone despises me, that's their problem. Mine is not to do anything despicable." This is the essence of conscious indifference. Others can think whatever they want, but you only need to worry about keeping your actions aligned with what is right. Life becomes much easier when you understand that you don't need to manage everyone's opinions, just your own conduct. Think about how this applies to everyday life. Someone makes a sarcastic comment about what you wear. Another criticizes your professional choices. Still another comments on your personal life as if they have authority. You can spend hours ruminating, justifying, trying to prove something, or you can train your mind to let it go. The difference is that by practicing indifference, you preserve yourself. You maintain energy for what truly builds your life. Here's a practical exercise. The next time you feel like reacting to criticism, pause and ask yourself, will this opinion change who I am? Will it change my values? Will it matter a month from now? If the answer is no, allow yourself to let go. Not as someone who ignores out of pride, but as someone who chooses peace over reactivity. Conscious indifference is like a filter. It doesn't block everything, but it prevents your mind from being invaded by irrelevant things. Over time, you realize that many battles simply don't need to be fought. And this isn't weakness, it's intelligence. Because the truly strong are not those who respond to everything, but those who master themselves and decide where it's worth investing energy. If this lesson spoke to you, write in the comments, "I choose conscious indifference." This simple phrase is already a training exercise because it reinforces in your mind that you don't need to care about everything. In the end, life becomes much clearer when you learn to let go of what never deserves space in you. 6. Reinforce your identity through character, not image. We live in a time when image seems to be worth more than substance. Social media, appearances, public praise, all of this creates the illusion that a person's worth lies in what others perceive of them. But this is the root of insecurity. When you measure your identity by the eyes of others, you become fragile. Because the same crowd that applauds today may boo tomorrow. Character, on the other hand, is firm, silent, and unshakable. Marco Aurelio wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What he meant was that your identity shouldn't be defined by comparisons or the need to prove something to someone, but by the integrity of your own actions. No matter what anyone says or thinks, your essence remains intact when you act according to your values. Think about how this applies in practice. Perhaps you felt pressured to showcase your achievements to be respected, or to dress a certain way to be accepted, or to maintain an impeccable image to avoid criticism. But all of this is theater. The problem with living for your image is that you become dependent on the audience. Your peace of mind fluctuates with the applause or the boos. Your life becomes a stage, not a solid building. Seneca warned, "What matters is not what others see in you, but what you are when no one is looking." This is the essence of Stoic freedom, living in such a way that your conscience is your greatest judge, not external gaze. Because when your identity is based on character, there is no criticism that destroys, nor praise that intoxicates. You remain the same, steadfast, centered, and authentic. Character is built through small daily choices. It's keeping your promises, even without witnesses. It's being honest even when no one would discover the lie. It's working hard, even without applause. It's treating others with dignity, even when you could act differently. These silent choices build an invisible fortress that protects against the storms of outside opinions. Here's today's practice. Ask yourself, if everyone stopped watching me today, who would I still be? If the answer is weak, it's a sign that you've been living more for image than for essence. So choose a concrete action that strengthens your character, not your appearance. It could be keeping a simple promise, correcting a mistake without expecting recognition, or acting with kindness in silence. Over time, you'll realize that true confidence doesn't come from showing off, but from knowing. You don't need to prove anything to anyone when you're already at peace with who you are. Outside opinions may change like the wind, but character remains as firm as a rock. If this lesson spoke to you, write in the comments. I choose to live by character, not image. Because in the end, what sustains your life is not the mask you wear, but the integrity of who you really are. But there's something important to understand. If you've been trying for a long time to step out of your comfort zone and learn more, but haven't been able to, there might be something you're not aware of. I know what it might be: anxiety. Anxiety is like a snake that creeps up silently and affects you without you even realizing it. It makes you feel bad for days, months, and even years. Living like this is like being sick all the time. But I know a solution. Stoic philosophers, along with modern psychology, have a way to help you get rid of it. I managed to cure myself of this anxiety. I made a video explaining how you can get rid of this problem, and it's in the first comment. Click the link in the first comment and start healing yourself from this feeling of anxiety. 7. Reduce irrelevant social scenarios. The mind becomes heavy not only because of what we think of ourselves, but also because of the excess of voices we allow in. Today, we live exposed to an avalanche of opinions: social media, superficial conversations, gossip, endless comparisons. It's as if we're in an arena where everyone has the right to express their opinion about their lives. And if you're not selective, you end up wasting energy on scenarios that don't contribute to your growth. The Stoics already warned of this danger, even in a world without the internet. Seneca wrote, "He who gives himself too much to the noise of the crowd loses himself." He knew that the more you let yourself be distracted by external noise, the less room you have to listen to your own reason. The result is a cluttered mind, filled with worries that aren't yours, but that still steal your peace. Think about how this happens in your daily life. You post something simple on social media, and within minutes you receive comments. Some praise, others criticize. Instead of standing firm in your beliefs, your mind begins to revolve around what they say. You adjust your life to the crowd's tastes, even if those tastes change weekly. Or you spend hours following gossip and comparisons that have no real impact on your life, but drain your energy as if they were personal battles. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Be like a rock against which the waves break, but it remains firm." This doesn't mean ignoring the world, but it also means not getting lost in it. It means building an internal filter that separates what deserves attention from what should be discarded. Without this filter, any irrelevant opinion can become a storm within you. The Stoic practice here is clear. Reduce social situations that don't add value. This might mean limiting your time on social media, avoiding gossip-filled environments, or simply choosing the conversations you engage in more carefully. Ask yourself, does this interaction bring me closer to who I want to be, or is it just distracting me? If the answer is distraction, you already know it's noise. The curious thing is that when you start to reduce this excess, you discover something powerful. Your mind gains clarity. You start to listen to your own voice more than to external noise. Your decisions stop being reactive to what others say and start being guided by your own values. This simple shift lessens the weight of other people's opinions because you're no longer exposed to them all. It's not about living in isolation, but about living intentionally. Choosing who to talk to, what to read, and where to focus your attention is a way to protect your mind. Just as you don't eat anything that comes your way, you shouldn't feed your conscience with just any opinion. If this lesson spoke to you, write in the comments, "I choose to reduce the noise and live with clarity." Because in the end, life is too short to waste energy on irrelevant social situations. What matters is not the crowd shouting outside, but the peace of those who have learned to listen to their own inner reason. 8. Admit that you make mistakes too, and that's okay. Much of the burden we feel about other people's opinions comes from the fear of appearing imperfect. We want to always get it right, to appear confident at all times, to never fail in front of anyone. But this expectation is a prison, because failure is part of human nature. And the more you try to hide your mistakes, the more vulnerable you become to external judgment. Seneca said, "To err is human, to persist in error is foolish." He didn't condemn the mistake itself, but the attachment to it. The problem isn't failing, but believing that failure destroys your value. When you understand that making mistakes is inevitable, the opinions of others lose some of their power. Because instead of feeling ashamed, you recognize, "I'm human, I make mistakes, and that's okay." The fear of failure is like a paralyzing ghost. It stops you from trying new things, from taking risks, from growing. How many dreams have been shelved because you didn't want to risk being seen stumbling? How many words have been left unsaid for fear of sounding foolish? How many opportunities have passed you by because you wanted to appear perfect? The truth is, everyone makes mistakes, even those who judge you. The difference lies in who uses mistakes as learning experiences and who uses them as an excuse to never try. Marcus Aurelius recalled in his Meditations, "If you are irritated by the mistakes of others, turn first to your own." This practice invites us to humility. If we ourselves fail, why expect constant approval from those who also fail? This understanding brings lightness. You stop living as a constant defendant in the court of other people's opinions and begin to live as an apprentice, aware that each misstep also points to the right path. Here's the Stoic practice. Next time you make a mistake, instead of hiding it, admit it to yourself. Yes, I made mistakes, and that's part of the process. Then ask, what can I learn from this? This simple shift breaks the shame and transforms mistakes into fuel for growth. And interestingly, when you admit your mistakes naturally, others lose the weapon of judgment. There's nothing to attack in someone who has already declared themselves human. Another practice is to recall past mistakes that seemed like the end of the world, but now no longer matter. What once seemed unbearable has become just a distant memory. This shows that most mistakes don't carry the weight the mind gives them in the moment. Recognizing this transience helps you live with more courage and less attachment to approval. Admitting you're wrong doesn't diminish your worth, it increases it, because it shows you're moving, trying, truly living. Only those who act make mistakes, and those who act sooner or later overcome the judgment of those who merely observe. If this lesson spoke to you, write in the comments, "I accept my mistakes as part of my growth." Because in the end, stopping caring about other people's opinions isn't about faking perfection, but about embracing imperfection with courage. After all, those who constantly strive to appear flawless become slaves to their image. Those who embrace their own mistakes become free to continue growing. 9. Surround yourself with examples of firmness. No one walks alone. As much as Stoic philosophy teaches us to seek inner strength, the truth is that the environment we live in shapes our perceptions. If you're surrounded by people who are constantly worried about what others think, sooner or later, you'll absorb the same pattern. But if you choose to live with examples of steadfastness, your mind begins to learn, almost silently, that it's possible to live differently, freer, more authentic, more solid. Epictetus said, "Show me who your friends are, and I will tell you who you are." Not because others define our identity, but because they act as mirrors. If you spend too much time around people eager for approval, you'll be led to believe that life is a permanent stage. But if you spend time with those who act with clarity and firmness, even in the face of criticism, you learn firsthand that it's not necessary to bow to external judgment. Consider historical figures who demonstrated this firmness. Marcus Aurelius, even as emperor, wrote to himself, reminding himself that he should act according to reason and virtue, not the applause of the crowd. Seneca, even in exile, maintained his serenity, cultivating what depended on him. These examples show that firmness does not mean harshness or arrogance, but constancy in the face of external storms. Now look at your life. Who are the role models you follow? Who are the voices you allow to influence your actions? Often, we don't realize that our insecurity is reinforced by our surroundings. A joke here, a criticism there, a snide comment elsewhere, all of this combined creates the feeling that we're constantly being judged. But by replacing this cycle with examples of courage, we realize that it's possible to act without so much fear. Here's the practice. Consciously choose who you spend your energy with. Look for people who aren't tied to appearances, but to character. Be inspired by teachers, philosophers, writers, and leaders who demonstrate firmness in the face of criticism. And if possible, surround yourself with people who value authenticity over performance. It doesn't have to be a large circle. Even one or two consistent examples can completely shift your perspective. Another practice is to maintain daily contact with the texts of the Stoics. Reading a page of Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus in the morning is like having a silent mentor by your side. These timeless voices can serve as a guide when your mind wants to bend to the weight of external opinions. They remind you in every sentence that what truly matters is living in harmony with reason and virtue, not with the expectations of the crowd. By surrounding yourself with examples of steadfastness, you become stronger by osmosis. It's like working out at a gym. Being around people who exercise inspires your body to move. Likewise, being around steadfast minds inspires your soul to remain stable. If this lesson spoke to you, write in the comments, "I choose firmness and courage." Because in the end, life is too short to be shaped by the fear of judgment. And when you surround yourself with solid examples, you learn that steadfastness isn't a privilege for the few. It's a daily choice, available to anyone who decides to stop living for others and start living for truth. 10. Live by your values, not expectations. The greatest antidote to the weight of other people's opinions is simple and yet demanding, living according to your values. External expectations change like the wind. Today someone tells you what to do, tomorrow someone else says the opposite. If you try to please everyone, you'll live in a cycle of endless frustration. But when your life is guided by internal principles, you gain a direction that doesn't move with the moods of the crowd. Epictetus recalled, "If you want to be invincible, don't fight every battle. Fight only the ones you can win, the ones within." This phrase is an invitation to abandon the futile struggle to live up to external expectations. You will never have control over them. What you can control is your conduct, your integrity, your choices. And when you begin to measure your life by what you believe and not by what is expected of you, external approval ceases to be a burden. Think about how many times you've shaped important decisions based on the perspective of others. You chose a career because it was respected, even though you didn't feel passionate about it. You held back on a project because you might be judged as too bold. You lived trapped in roles that weren't yours just to avoid disappointing. The problem with following external expectations is that you may even win applause, but inside, you feel the emptiness of not having lived your own life. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "Stop getting distracted. Stop getting lost in useless conversations. Only one thing matters, living according to the nature you were given." This phrase reminds us that living in harmony with our values is more important than any approval. Because values are roots, firm, consistent, unshakable. Expectations are leaves. They change color, fall, disappear. Here's the Stoic practice. Write down your 3 core values: Not just what you think is nice to say, but what you truly want to live by. It could be courage, discipline, honesty, compassion, or freedom. Then analyze your routine. How many of your daily actions reflect these values, and how many are there simply to satisfy external expectations? This simple exercise reveals whether you've been guided from within or controlled from without. Another step is to remember that living by your own values requires courage. This means that at times you will be criticized, but this criticism loses its weight when you know you are acting in alignment with your essence. Those who live by their own principles may even hear boos, but they carry within them the serenity of being on the right path. Those who live by external expectations may receive applause, but they go to sleep feeling like they've betrayed themselves. If this lesson spoke to you, write in the comments, "I choose to live by my values." This decision is the hallmark of true Stoic freedom, to stop being a puppet of expectations and take charge of your own life. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how many people like what you do. What matters is whether you can look at yourself with respect, knowing that you lived true to your beliefs. Ultimately, stopping caring about other people's opinions doesn't mean living in isolation or being indifferent to everyone, but learning to put everything in its place. Criticism may exist, but it doesn't have the power to define who you are. Applause may sound good, but it can't guide your choices. What sustains true freedom is living according to your values, with firmness, clarity, and courage. The Stoics understood that life is too short to waste trying to please everyone. Every day you bow to external expectations, you move further away from yourself. But with every step you take toward what you believe in, you strengthen your identity and gain a freedom that no one can take away. So today's practice is simple. Look within, discover your values, and walk by them, even if the world criticizes you. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how many applaud you. What matters is whether you can look at yourself and say, "I was true to what I believe." If this message spoke to you, write in the comments, "I choose to be free from opinions."